Welcome to Java with John, MAISA's new webinar that connects Michigan's ISD leaders over a virtual cup of coffee. I'm your host, John Severson. Welcome today. We have an amazing program for you. We're going to talk to Erin Pell. She's our Project Director of Instructional Applications, and we're focusing on MiCoachCompass and MiRead. So we're really excited about this opportunity to come together. So I have our guest, and she's just ready to go. And we want you to just share a little bit about your educational background and your journey, Erin, on how you got here today, and what does our association mean to you?
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me, John. So I started my career teaching in Chicago, actually, with Chicago Public Schools. Although I was born and raised in Michigan and graduated from Michigan State, I started teaching there. And after several years of teaching, moved into coaching, and then came back to Michigan and worked in Wayne County as both a classroom teacher and a coach. So it was really neat that I got to work in a lot of different environments, and I think that's really been to my benefit in the long run. What initially brought me to MAISA was MiRead itself. I kind of stumbled upon the application while looking through the MAISA website for some different content. And after seeing the application, I had to look it up. I'm like, okay, well, what is this? This sounds really cool. And as a coach that lived through the Read by Grade 3 era, I saw how challenging IRIP implementation could be. So when I learned that there was a product out there that was helping districts write and manage plans in a more efficient way, I was like, I really want to be a part of that. And as far as MAISA itself is concerned, I came from a really large school district within Michigan, and I have to admit that we didn't engage with our ISD as much as we could have. And it wasn't until I came on board MAISA that I realized how much ISDs have to offer. And I was kind of amazed. I kind of thought, like, man, we recreated the wheel so many times. If we had just tapped into our ISD, we really would have had a lot more resources and support at our fingertips.
Well, Erin, I think what's really exciting to have you here is your experience in Chicago, and your background in education is so rich. And when you came on to our staff, we were so excited to have you. And I think and believe that when we talk about MiCoachCompass and MiRead, your practitioner work, you're a practitioner in that field, and now you're using these tools. You're able to see it through the lens of those who are really here to support. So let's talk a little bit deeper about MiCoachCompass and MiRead and its impact. Tell us about that. What are you seeing with those two great tools that we're designing and are being used across the state right now?
Yeah. So, MiCoachCompass was designed to be a tool that supports coaches in capturing their work for the purpose of refinement of their coaching practices and advocacy. So we want them to really celebrate the work that they're doing and demonstrate that impact to their stakeholders, which you can really do powerfully when you have that raw data. And even on top of that, we wanted MiCoachCompass not just to be a data collection tool, but really a coaching workspace. So somewhere that coaches wanted to go naturally to do the work and document all of the work that they do and organize it. And then it just so happened to have this, reporting component on the side. And so we are in our second pilot year. We have about 27 different ISDs on board right now. And at this point in the school year, we're really seeing some powerful insights. When we started in the fall, there was a lot of onboarding and a lot of conversations about data quality and how are we making sure that we're using the tool. And just now, January, February, March timeline, we're really starting to see the fruits of the labor. And we're starting to see coaches make some really powerful insights based on the data that we're seeing. So, for example, I love to tell the story about a coach who noticed that based on their activity data that they saw in MiCoachCompass, they noticed that they were spending a lot of their time within a particular building around Essential 3, when really their building level MyKit plan was more centered around Essential 7. So that gave the coach some insight to pivot their future work in response to that so that it was in greater alignment with that building goal. And that's exactly the kinds of insights we're hoping that MiCoachCompass might provoke. And then on top of that, we're also seeing coaches do some great work with advocacy and really celebrating their work. Recently, we just hosted a webinar where we shared a few different templates that coaches were using to share with their principals, with their school boards, with their central office folks. And that has been really, really powerful, even to the extent that it saved coaching programs. We had a leader share with us that they were having basically an allocation conversation, and coaching was up on the chopping block because we know that it is an expensive endeavor. But because of the data and the artifacts that this coach was able to share, their coaching program continued to be funded. And that's really what I think is so powerful. And, it's not an easy thing to do. Coaching is a very intimate act, and we know that there's a lot of teacher and coach relationship and trust involved. So to be able to speak to the work of coaching without compromising those relationships is just a really great thing. And we're getting a lot of good feedback that this tool allows coaches to do that.
Yeah, I like the word there, pivot, too, where a coach could actually individually reflect on their progress or where they're at. They can even use that tool to check in with folks, the people they're helping. They can show the principal the work they're doing, the superintendent. I love the approach of informing a school board. ISDs are always talking about the work that they do. And here's another data point focused on literacy, which is a huge state initiative, as always. And now they have a little bit more data, a little bit more purpose. And what I like about coaching tool is so many of you, and you've been a big part of that, Erin, have built this tool from the voices that you heard in the field. And now we have about half of the ISDs using this free tool. And it's really making some positive changes in their work that coaches are doing every day. So you feel really good about it as well, don't you?
I do. And, this tool has really kind of come out of a lot of engagement with the Early Literacy Task Force and the Coaching Network. And it's through my engagement with them that I'm able to bring that back to the tool and make sure that their needs are reflected and that it's able to capture the real work that they're doing out there.
Michigan Department of Education, they have been a strong partner in this work as well. How are they communicating or working with us in the MiRead space right now?
Yeah, so I've been working with some really great consultants at the department, and what we're doing right now is really collaborating on what the IRIP is going to look like, what different features and fields it might have. And they're really looking to make sure that the template that they'll be promoting looks very close to MiRead. So whether you're using MiRead or whether you're using the template that MDE puts out, in both cases, you'll have a really sound IRIP that is compliant but still effective. So we're just so grateful to have their collaboration and be able to bounce ideas off of one another.
This is perfect because the compliance piece is something people will ask. Does MiRead meet the state requirement? Is it compliant with what we need to do? And I think and believe what you just said, we're already working with them to ensure that the MiRead tool is aligned, correct?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And the same thing goes with the reporting piece. We're going to make sure that the data that's reported onto the ISD and to MDE is exactly what they're looking for. So again, we're happy to have them in the conversation so early on so that we're not having to backtrack or make changes, and we know that the tool will be ready.
So as an association, we asked you that question, what does our association mean to you? And I think of these are tools that our association is building for our members to use in real time. So as we look at that tool, we're also going to talk a little bit about MiRead, and you're seeing some impact and some transitions in that, especially with PA 146 coming along. How do you see that building and forming across Michigan and its impact today?
Sure. MiRead, we're currently undergoing a major 3.0 revamp in response to PA 146. The deeper I dig into the legislation, I just realize how complex it is. And although it's well intended, it is going to be a big lift for folks to implement. So we're really making sure that MiRead is configured in a way that kind of takes that heavy compliance lift off of districts and ISDs so that they can really focus on its intended purpose and the intended purpose of IRIPs, which is really just to make thoughtful, responsive plans for students, with an identified reading need. So again, we're digging through the legislation. We're kind of teasing out what it means. We're digging through those new screening assessments that were recently approved and making sure that we're interpreting those. We're working on that reporting piece, which is going to be a huge component, where districts have to report IRIPs to the ISD and the ISD has to report that data to MDE. So we're making sure that the platform is able to do all of that very seamlessly and very efficiently, again, so we can just remove that compliance burden off of our locals and our ISDs. So we're very much in a fact-finding stage right now, but we're excited for what's to come.
I like as you talked at the very beginning of what you learned, how ISDs can really be a stronger conduit, right? And not replicate doing this so many times. And hearing you talk a little bit deeper about MiRead, I hear putting some tools together that are going to be much easier for schools to follow rather than doing multiple times in different ways. And I know that part of our work is through our networks like GELN to get their feedback on these tools. You see an opportunity here that if we keep leaning in, we could do the same as we've done with MiCoachCompass and have more connections and also find the models in the state that we could, support, reaffirm with our members to learn from. What do you see happening if we can build this and keep doing what we're doing? What do you see as a positive vision of the work going on with MiRead?
What I would really love to see eventually with this tool is us being able to close the gap and figure out what works for students right away. So when you think about what MiRead does is it brings in assessment data. It couples that assessment data with strategies from my strategy bank. We're going to build in some functionality where users can track how often they meet with those students so that we have an idea of strategy fidelity and implementation fidelity. And then we're going to continue to collect and bring in student data as we go. So when you think about that, we've got the data, we've got the strategy, we've got the fidelity tracking, and then we've got more student data. So we can really see how these strategies and approaches are impacting students in a really short amount of time. And that's not an easy thing to do. And I'm not aware of any other tool that's able to put all those different pieces together in one space. And what I hope will emerge are some strategies that are really powerful and are really showing some growth.
Kind of hearing the building of an ecosystem where it's putting all these things together through the lens of that teacher who's trying to solve problems in real time, right? So which we know if we do that better, we have an opportunity to even improve teaching and learning every day for kids. So you take some of these pieces we've talked about. What are the field's upcoming needs, or what do you see kind of down the road in this next reiteration of what we're building and putting together?
Yeah, I think PA 146 implementation is going to be huge. It touches so many different things. It touches coaching, it touches instruction, it touches MTSS. So I think the more the field learns about PA 46, what's going to be expected of them, what resources they have for support, the better off they'll be. And, I think that's really where MAISA comes into play. We've got so many networks and task forces and advisories. And as long as ISDs and districts are staying engaged in those spaces, they're going to be okay. Because that's where a lot of those conversations are already happening. And we're really working together to develop our understanding of what those requirements are going to be, and our responses.
Well, I think I know the answer to my next question because you talked about all the advisory that people were grabbing input from. But, are there concerns with protecting the functionality and safety and integrity of the services that we're putting together? I mean, how are you in these rooms? How are we talking about, protection of this data? What are you seeing and what are you hearing? And what's the feedback you get from the field?
Right. So, I think part of that comes in from, like, one of the questions we're asking ourselves all the time is, what data do you need precisely in order to make certain instructional decisions, so that we're not bringing in data that isn't meaningful? So we're only bringing in what's absolutely necessary. And that, the first layer of that is when it comes to instructional decision making. The second layer of that is, in the case of MiRead, when it comes to reporting and what's being reported. Like, what is the intent of that reporting? And that intent will determine exactly what data is being carried forward, so that we're not oversharing and carrying on sensitive information. And then there's even, like, the technical aspects of it all. So we're making sure that all of the data that is being transferred is in secure spaces, on secure servers, with deeply embedded protocols, and even the architecture of our systems and the way that data is transferred across them and permission settings is all very thoughtfully done.
Mm.
As opposed to, maybe like a local Google share or file share. Like, there's a lot of avenues for more local homegrown options that can open the door for security risks.
Yeah, you're taking me back into some of those older systems. And I really believe that MAISA is leveraging a lot of expertise across the field to ensure we get the security right as we build this, at the same time capturing the voices of those who will use these tools for their students. So I have one last question, and I know there's probably a lot more out there, but do you have any advice? This is your chance to give advice to ISD superintendents or first line administrators, new members. What are ways they could leverage MiCoachCompass and MiRead? What are you seeing that might be some ways they could even leverage it that they haven't even thought of?
Sure. One of the cool things about MiCoachCompass is that we do have particular roles for administrators where they can take a peek at their own local coaches' data to see what's going on. And I think that data is, a really important data point that's a piece of a larger puzzle. So when you're thinking about your larger systems and the impact of instructional work that you've been going, tap into that, check in, because that can inform other pieces. This is all interconnected. So they have direct access to that and can utilize it when they're making decisions as a leader. And, as far as MiRead is concerned, I think just making sure that whatever tool you're using, whatever method you're using, is really easing the burden off of educators so that all they have to think about is instructional decision making. And I think that's obviously where MiRead comes into play. But again, let's just make it really easy for teachers to make the right decisions.
Well, and I want to say, Erin, we so appreciate you at MAISA, and I would tell our listeners the most important thing you've brought to our organization is really looking at this through the lens as a former teacher and looking at ways to take out obstacles. And I think that is a game changer. We can make a lot of tools, but if we don't get the voice of those we're trying to help and support, we will easily miss the mark. So, Erin Pell, thank you so much for being here today. We so appreciate you. And to all our guests, if you have any questions, an idea for a topic, or you'd like to be a guest, email us at javawithjohn@gomaisa.org. And don't forget to visit gomaisa.org. And we have a new landing page, by the way, for PA 146. And I know Erin Pell will be glad to help anyone with a problem or trying to help you with a solution. So until next time, keep leading and serving with vision and passion. And remember, We are better together. Thank you.